Good morning. One common thing to do at the Shabbos table is after having challah or after having a meal or in the middle of a meal to sing Zemirot, to sing different songs that were composed special for the Shabbos day. And this is recorded in the Mishnah Berurah, who writes that after concluding one's meal, after eating, one should go ahead and sing Shabbos Zemirot. Why is that the case? What's interesting to note is that the Mishnah Berurah says afterwards. Clearly, the minhag has also been adopted to do during and throughout the meal, though some have been makbid, have been particularly careful to only say those Zemirot at the end of the meal, but common practice seems to be to do so throughout the meal. Why would we do this? So Rav Shechter was quoted in the name of Rav Soloveitchik, that is a kiyum of zachor es yom HaShabbos l'kadosh, of mentioning the greatness of the day. That's why we make kiddush. And so there's some level of fulfillment of mentioning and remembering the Shabbos day to sing Zemirot accordingly at the Shabbos meal. Of course, that's true with Divrei Torah as well, which is a given that we should have Divrei Torah, but Zemirot also seems to be an accomplishment of Zachor es Yom HaShabbos. Now, one question that comes up in the context of Shabbos Zemirot is, can we say God's name when doing so? Many seem to have the practice not to, though there are those that also certainly seem to have the practice to do so. The simple explanation of why one would not is because we are particularly careful anytime it comes up to recite God's name, that we don't want to recite God's name in vain. That is obviously one of the Isurei de Oraisa, one of the biblical prohibitions. Therefore, we're particularly careful. However, we do say that there are times that we make exceptions. For example, when it comes to chinuch, to teaching our children of making brachos or davening, that we tend to be a little bit more lenient in that regard, and even in the context of limud Torah. And therefore, there is a logical approach to extend that and to say that for singing Zemirot, we are praising God, that it is appropriate to say God's name. However, even within that school of thought, the general approach is that that's only for the first time that one says God's name. One should not go ahead and repeat it over and over again if they were repeating words in the Zemirot. Now, there is an argument to be made specifically to say Hashem's name, because the Mishnah Berurah writes that when learning Torah, if we're going to recite a whole pasuk, we should actually use God's name as opposed to saying Hashem or something similar. And therefore, some say that that would apply here as well. Why would we substitute God's name with Hashem or something similar? The bottom line is that both approaches have firm basis in halacha, and if one has a specific practice to say God's name in Zemirot, then because we are so cautious to not do so unnecessarily, they should for sure make sure that to concentrate to the best ability when doing so, and certainly not to interrupt, but one should follow their practice and their poskim on this matter. Have a wonderful day.